Hello, everybody. This is Rory Brown checking in.
And Callum Hardingham.
And welcome to episode 1 of the Get Strong podcast, where our aim is to create a community of strong minds and strong bodies.
Oh, yes. And today we are going to be diving in. This is the first episode, as Rory just said. And our intention of today is to really give you an understanding of what Get Strong is, what it means to us, and what it will mean for you guys who are going to be tuning in week to week to listen to the content and experience what we are delivering.
In today's episode, we want to touch base on what the fundamentals of strength are. So we're going to be delving a little bit deeper into the 4 pillars of strength. So physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So if that's something that you have not been aware of in the past, today is going to be an awesome episode for you. So Cal, do you want to kick us off, brother?
Yes, I do, dude. Look, first and foremost, I'm super excited for this. For those of you who are tuning in right now, you may have caught Rory and I on the Instagram lives we did over the lockdown period. I think we did about 10 in a row, week to week. And it was easy for us to both see that we had something there. The conversations were flowing. Lots of great content was coming from both of us. But most importantly, the feedback was there. People were enjoying the conversations. They were gaining value from the conversations. And so it seemed natural to us to say, look, what can we do now? Where do we take this? Where do we progress this? And a podcast seemed like the most natural and organic progression of what we were doing. And Get Strong is something that was actually born from one of Rory's ideas a few years back, and I'm sure we'll go into that today. However, when he brought it to my attention, it resonated so much. It seemed like it would seem crazy not to go with that concept, and you're going to know more about that as Rory just explained with those 4 pillars. But let's dive into those pillars, bro, and let's give some context to the 4 pillars of Get Strong and what it is we're delivering and bringing to the table.
Yeah, cool, man. So the 4 pillars, as I mentioned at the start, so we have physical strength, we have mental strength, we have emotional strength, and we have spiritual strength. And that is what makes up strength as a whole. And I think within today's society, if I just said to you the word strength, Cal, unbeknown to you of the other pillars, what would you think of? If I just said, we're going to go get strong, but what would initially spring to mind?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would be thinking about those 4 pillars, but for the most part, most people are going to just think about strength physically.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to lift a load, the ability to lift something and get stronger in the physical realm.
Mm-hmm.
However, we know there's so much more to that, especially when we're going into the gym called life on a day-to-day basis, whether you like it or not. We must be prepared for more 4 angles if we want to succeed. Not only succeed, thrive, enjoy, have fulfillment, meaning, purpose, all of those things.
And I love that idea of that you just said about life being like a gym. And this is an analogy that I know you and I have both used with our clients in the past, is how the challenges that we face in a gym are also representative, or they are a picture of some of the challenges that we face in life. And when the going gets tough, what do? Do we push? Do we squeeze out that extra rep? Or do we walk away? And this ties in nicely with the first 2 pillars of strength that we're going to look at. So the first is obviously the physical aspect of strength. And when we think of this physical pillar, it's our ability to take care of our bodies. So when we think of the fundamentals of physical strength, to me, what springs to mind is things like exercise, sleep, nutrition, rest, recovery, hydration. Our body requires attention from us on a day-to-day basis in order to help us function well in what we do at work and at home and in social opportunities. It's important that we are exercising regularly because we know the benefits. It's important that we are aware of our nutrition because we know the benefits. Same with sleep. These are the fundamentals. Cal, what have you got to add to that?
Yeah, man, we just got to be real and say, look, the body's this flesh vehicle that we are driving around at all times. And the idea that we brought in many times in our conversations, we are not our body. We are not our thoughts. We are not our emotions. We are that which is experiencing all of those things. And we'll unpack that in a moment. But ultimately, if we aren't at least acknowledging what Rory's just explained there with these core fundamental principles of what health and strength is within the body, then it's diluting our experience. It's diluting our ability to navigate life. Because ultimately, if there's something off within the body, then that's going to challenge the mind. It's going to preoccupy the mind and take away from our ability to give attention to that which lights us up. We're just going to be continually having to maintain something or fix something rather than focus on expanding, evolving, and moving forward. And so absolutely agree, brother. If we don't nail things like sleep, or at least work towards that, nutrition, movement, mobility, all of those different functions that are within the, you know, principle of the physicality of strength and what we're talking about with Get Strong, we're just taking away from ourselves. We're making it harder for ourselves to have a fulfilling experience of life. We've got to honor the body. We've got to honor the vehicle.
And what's super interesting there, and this ties in nicely with pillar number 2, is we can, on the outside, appear fit and healthy. You know, if we look at today's measures of success when it comes to physical aesthetics, you know, we can look at someone with a 6-pack or huge bulging biceps or toned glutes and think they've got it all. But just because you look healthy on the outside doesn't mean that you are always healthy or strong on the inside. And this is where mentally working out is so important. And before Cal and I jumped on the call, we spoke about how so many people, 99% of people, just function day to day on autopilot. And one of the key things that stands out to me with mental strength is the ability to be self-aware. We have to be aware enough of what it is that we are doing and why we are doing it, and aware that, and this is something Cal and I will say in every single podcast, you have a choice. You get to choose what it is that you do. You get to choose what your personal core values are. You get to choose the decisions that you make in life, the thoughts that you have, the beliefs that you have. And I think when we look at, again, the fundamentals of mental strength, it's being able to do all those things whilst maintaining a level of integrity, you know, doing things to be honest, to be real, to be whole as an individual. And another thing that stands out to me here, Cal, is recognizing what an individual's full potentials are, recognizing what it is that we are capable of. So many people underestimate themselves. You used a beautiful term in one of the podcasts, in one of the Instagram lives that we did, to do with estimation. We underestimate ourselves and overestimate the consequences.
Yeah, the terminology, I'll have to pull that up, but the basis of it is, you know, I
might have even written it down. Whenever Callum and I do Instagram lives, if Callum ever says something that's interesting, I'll rip out something from a magazine and write it on this.
Here we go, yeah. I've got it, man.
Have you? You found
is that the notepad, is it?
Yeah, this is the notepad.
We radically underestimate our capacity and irrationally overestimate our problems. So we radically underestimate our capacity and irrationally overestimate our problems.
And through that ability to, if we can acknowledge what our full potentials are and have the open-mindedness to think there is more to my life than this, than where it is that I am currently at, then we're able to gain more knowledge and obtain more self-growth in order to, I suppose, to transform our lives, taking us further to something powerful, to something that it is that we actually want in life, right?
Yeah, dude. And look, I want to highlight a couple of points because you said some great things there, and I really want to bring them to the attention. Number one, most people's perspective of health. Like we'll have to do a full podcast on this, but I've heard that so many times. You know, even when like someone's had health issues or people have passed away, and I've heard that term. You know, but they were so healthy. Based on what measurement? Well, you know, they always used to run and they didn't eat McDonald's and that kind of stuff. And, you know, without kind of being too comical within this, most people's understanding of the diversity of what health is and the opportunities for greater health is incredibly limited because it is very much fixed in a small understanding of what the physical side of health is rather than the vast understanding of all the 4 pillars and how we can contribute. And I think that's a really good point you bring, you know, but they've got a 6-pack or, you know, look, they go to the gym and they get really, you know, big. It's like, yes, that could be a part of it, but to link it into the mental side, which is what we're explaining right now, the reasoning behind that will determine whether that person is in integrity or out of alignment. I can remember working with many different men and women who were doing stage shows, you know, fitness expeditions, and kind of getting super shredded to get on stage. And I remember having a conversation with one lady where I was wanting to find her why. What's a deeper reasoning? You know, what's the mental and emotional connection to this? And it was never really about getting on the stage in the sense of having that glory of winning. It was actually at a deeper level, she lacked the feeling of significance. She lacked the feeling of approval. And for her, it was a way of momentarily feeling like she was significant and approved of, because she could leverage her body in able to do that. Now, when we looked at that further, it was like, well, there's nothing wrong or right naturally about that. By the way, for anyone listening, I think if the intention is there and it's aligned, cool. But for her, we were looking at the detriment to her body to continually do this, and how literally she was outsourcing something that she could be able to resource, i.e., develop internally. She was needing to be on the stage rather than wanting to. And that's the distinction there. And so, mental strength is very diverse, but it's ultimately understanding where are you being driven from, so we're not driving ourselves off course, so we're not misleading ourselves. It's also about developing resilience and being able to comprehend and overcome adversity that will naturally occur during your life. When we utilize the intention of mental strength in all of its realms, we are just much more prepared for life's inevitable challenges. And, we both touched on some of the emotional sides there, so it feels probably a good time to move on to what is emotional strength, bro. So tell me in your words, how do we understand emotional strength, and what are some of the factors?
What's really popped into my mind is how, as individuals, we have human needs on an emotional level, so things like trust, security, loyalty, love, we need those things. And Cal, what was interesting now when I was listening to you is the example that you gave of that lady, how she projected her needs onto something else. It's like, if I do this, then it will make me feel like this. Whether what you realize with her, it's like, no, that's not going to be the solution. What you actually need is something that comes from within. And I think this is where we tie in emotional strength, because to me, it comes back to self-awareness, being able to be aware of what it is that we are doing, to be able to self-regulate, to be able to empathize, to be able to communicate, not just with self, but also well with others. And through self-awareness, it gives us the skills, if you like, to recognize our emotions, our thoughts, our beliefs, our moods, what drives us in life, and how those things also affect the people that we interact with throughout our days, our weeks, our months, our years in life. And if we are, it's only when we are fully aware of ourselves that, again, we realize that we actually have a choice and the ability to create change there. That's what makes me think of emotional strength. And also something to add in on that, being able to regulate your emotions.
Being able to regulate your emotions.
Some people in life you will meet will just be inherently angry people, or some people, but whatever it is, we will all know someone that we think, oh wow, yeah, that person is not really able to self-regulate their behaviors. They've either got an on button or an off button. And Cal, I don't know about you, but that's been a real skill for me, and is probably still something I'm working on. But yeah, being able to self-regulate emotions, and particularly, and this is kind of cool, man, where we're going with this, because this ties in with the nature of the podcast. Because right now, this is me, we're two dudes sat opposite each other, and we wanted to create this podcast for other men to talk about one of the most powerful things, which again is this emotional strength, the ability to be vulnerable, the ability to self-regulate our emotions. Men are not as good at doing that as women, period. And this is one of the key reasons why we've set up this podcast, is because Callum and I are going to be sharing with you a lot of our personal stories, challenges, battles, as well as getting on some awesome guys and girls to join us on the show to talk about how they have experienced strength through adversity as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, Cal, I've done a huge spout there, bro. I've gone off on 1,000,001 different tangents. It's over to you to wonderfully tie it all together for me.
And that's why we're here. But the key word, the regulation and the awareness of emotions. So first and foremost, emotional strength, and the way we're seeing it is, number one, becoming aware of emotions rather than avoiding them. Like, it doesn't matter if you're predominantly in one emotion. We're continually fluctuating through emotions throughout our day. Some are more predominant than others. We live in some more easier than others, and that's because we've trained those emotions more frequently, more consistently. And that's the key point there. So the other side of this is also the understanding that we can train our emotional state. We can become better at activating a particular emotional state that serves a type of thought frequency that then serves a capacity to act and show up to our life in a different way. We have to understand, there's this perpetual cycle of thought, then it precedes emotional state precedes thought, and this continues cyclically. And in that idea, what's happening is the thought emotion loop essentially determines the way we focus, where we place our attention, our action, and therefore our results and experience of life. So if we've got really good, intentionally or unconsciously, at training a particular emotional state, then we're going to likely replicate the outcome consistently over time as well. What does that mean? Why is that important for everyone? Well, look, what Rory and I are speaking about is, one, becoming aware, being brave and courageous enough to become aware, i.e. be willing to be vulnerable to the new emotions that we are perhaps less trained in, right? Because that can be, it's kind of like if you're in the gym, if you're operating from the ego standpoint, you probably avoid exercises you haven't done that much of, right? Because, it feels more comfortable and more empowering in some ways to do the things we're good at. And it's the same with emotions. Even if we have the idea that, if I could train that emotion more, it would be great. It's that period between not being good at doing it that most people avoid. So I want to make really clear here is that we're going to be speaking a lot about how you can train new emotional states. So get better at being in a sense of inner peace, get better at being in a sense of being more composed, at being courageous. We can train that. And often Rory and I will speak about using the physical modality to intentionally train the emotional and mental and spiritual modalities. So that's another thing we'd add, if anything, to the emotional training side, which I think we've now alerted into some of the spiritual sides of things, bro. But tell me if you wanted to add anything else to that.
No, that's good. I suppose one of the last things I would add to the spirituals, the emotional side of strength, is empathy. And again, I think empathy,
passion, empathy,
yeah, definitely. And again, looking at it from a point of view of a man, when women get together, they'll be like, "How you doing?" And they'll be like, "Oh, really bad. I had a really crap week. Kevin's been sort of pissing me off, and we need to talk about it." They're very good at doing that.
It's always Kev, isn't it?
Kevin, what have you been doing now? Sorry to anyone who is listening who's called Kevin. And yeah, it's when guys get together, if there's a problem and they're all sitting in the pub, that person won't mention that there's a problem. It's just like, "Hey, how you doing?" It's like, "Yeah, all good. You?" Just sort of that straight backhand again. And I think it's something that we want to encourage, and something that we're going to be looking at, is how empathy gives us the ability to understand the emotional makeup of others and of ourselves. And with that,
and be strong enough to hold the space when you invite that. Because that's the key thing there. When we are trained emotional strength, we're not only more capable to acquire empathy and utilize that as an approach, we're also more capable to hold the space for what that opens up to, right? Because it's the whole can of worms analogy. Yeah, if you
don't they? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. If you go into that conversation with the intention of empathy, i.e. for yourself or another, but then you haven't realized that, then that requires holding the space at that time to just be open to what is said and responsive to it rather than reactive. Those two have to come hand in hand. And again, I'm so excited about unpacking everything we're speaking about today, and almost taking an hour for each one, or 30 minutes to 45 minutes for each one. But hopefully people getting an idea of all the different realms we can be working with in a good way.
But
Spiritual strength. What is it? Why is it? How is it?
when we're thinking of that spiritual pillar, I suppose it's our ability to find that higher purpose in life. And it makes me think of for those of you who are watching, listening, both Alan, both
And
Callum
Kevin.
and I, both Alan, Kevin, and myself have trained in NLP, so neuro linguistic programming. And one thing that we've been looking at is the logical levels of change. And it's think of it as a pyramid. So if you were going to draw a pyramid and split it into different categories, at the bottom you'd have environment, above that you'd have behavior, above that you'd have capabilities, above that beliefs and values, above that identity, and then that final, the pinnacle, if you like. So it's the accumulation of everything beneath that leads to the top. This is our spiritual mission, our higher purpose in life. That's what it makes me think of, and it's I suppose about having the desire and the drive to live your best life. And I know that might sound a little bit corny or cheesy, but that's what this is all about. We've got an opportunity here on this planet to do some amazing things, not just for ourselves, but also for others. And life is hard. So we might as well try and do everything we damn well can to live the best one that we can, right?
Yeah, dude. Look, as the Buddhists would say, you know, life is suffering, and that isn't as morbid as it sounds. And actually, it's knowing that there is an essence of suffering within life, whereby life in its physical form is here to challenge us to grow. And should we accept that challenge, it can be a much more pleasurable experience, because we just therefore leave behind any resistance towards the challenge, which is often, from a psychological perspective, the thing that is the core proponent of the problem, of the issue, of the stress, our resistance to the challenge. You know, if we're doing a set of pull-ups and we know we have to do it, but the whole time when we're doing it, going, I hate pull-ups. Oh, this is disgusting. Oh, that makes it so much harder, rather than just kind of getting on with it and doing it and seeing why this particular repetition of movement is a contribution to something bigger than what it actually seemingly is on the surface. What does that mean, right? Well, you said something, you know, having a, what was the term? It was a more meaningful life, or
higher purpose, more meaningful life.
Best life, yeah. And yeah, it can be quite cliche, that, but it's true. But what does that mean, right? So it's unpacking the idea from spiritual strength perspective, is knowing that we can apply a greater sense of meaning to all that we do, knowing that how we do anything is how we do everything. And ultimately, the way I see it, you know, for instance, if we were in a workout, I want to connect the dots between why I'm doing this and what this contributes to in a greater, bigger picture. Spiritual needs, spiritual strength is that, in essence. It's giving greater meaning to our smaller contributions. It's knowing that we are here to contribute to something that's bigger than ourselves. And often our greatest struggle is when we don't have any connection to something bigger than us. And you know, one of the things that I constantly see in many different religions and many different approaches and philosophies to life is the idea that we must put aside this pursuit of happiness and instead invite the pursuit of meaning, because then we will create a greater depth and quality to our lives. Then we will eliminate the majority of the struggle that creates such unnecessary suffering. And here, this is a strength. And when Rory and I say strength, we literally mean getting better at doing something, at being something, and increasing our capacity. So from the spiritual perspective, in summary, it's being able to know that we can contribute to something greater than ourselves, have attached meaning to our small actions and our big actions, the symbolism of something deeper than what we think we are. And again, we're going to spend so much time speaking about this. We're going to have people who are experts in all of these different fields coming in and speaking on these different topics. Today is an overview, and hopefully we, amongst baffling people and ourselves, we've also contributed to some sort of clarity and excitement for what's to come.
Yeah, Cal, that's awesome. I'm happy with everything that we have covered there, and I feel this is probably a good time to wrap up our very first Get Strong podcast.
I
episode.
believe so.
I just want to thank all the listeners and people who are coming in to join us on this one. This is going to be a very exciting journey for myself and Callum. We've been friends now for a good number of years. I met Callum at a business convention in Birmingham, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And for those of you who don't know, Callum and I have been virtual friends ever since. I've never seen Cal in person since then. But we've built a very wonderful friendship, and not only is Callum a great friend to me, but he's also an incredible mentor. And I can't wait for you guys to hear just the insane and incredible things that are in that man's mind. So Cal, thank you so much for joining me and creating this podcast with me, man. I'm super excited to see where it goes.
Dude, the feeling's mutual, man. I think real recognizes real, and we both come at this from a perspective of all in. We both dedicated our life to what it means to be healthy from all 4 angles, and we are both living, breathing examples of that, and works in progress. We are not perfect. We are innately flawed, but we recognize that and we work on that, and we want to share that journey with you all and share other people's journey with that as well. And one thing I will say, if you've enjoyed this episode, if you've been excited by this episode and you're listening to this on maybe a clip on Instagram, be sure to share in your stories. Get the word out there. Share it with your friends, share it with your family. We want to bring the conversation to all people. And yeah, that's all I have to say for today.
Cool. Guys and girls, we will see you all in our next episode.
Awesome.
Cal, take it easy, bro. In a bit.
Peace out.